I never had. I'm on my own, so all alone. If only you ever knew what I'm going through. Okay, guys, don't mind me. Don't mind me at all. Good night, everybody. How is everybody doing tonight? Good night, good night, good night, my people. How is everybody doing tonight? Well, I don't know, so I rush to come home, because, excuse me, I rush to come home because I have to get this reading on the road. We got to get this reading out of the way. So I hurry up and come home so that when some analysts out Sister Flagger, Georgia, waiting on me, I say, wait up the man. Yeah. So I hurry up and got home from work so that I can bring you all this lovely reading of this book, The Anointed Child. People, I don't know, but this book is quite fascinating. And those of you who are, I saw Liz said today that she don't know what to think about the book. Me neither, because the book has such conflicts, such conflicting thoughts, and it does show to me. It shows how hypocritical Christianity can be. That's what it shows to me. How hypocritical Christianity could be. Because look at it. Look how Dinah's parents raised her to love God, to fear God. They preached in her head that abortion was wrong. It wasn't something to be tolerated. It's something that wouldn't be tolerated in their household and all that. And then now that Dinah is pregnant, it is coming to be circumstantial. Now all of a sudden, abortion is circumstantially necessary. No longer is there a hard and fast rule that abortion is wrong. And we have seen that too in the Bible, as we have been reading, right, God? We have seen that in the Bible too, where the rules can be bent according to the circumstances. You just need to modify the rules and and everything will be just fine, because everything is not set in stone. It's not cut and dry. Just like how Zelophehad's daughters were able to go to Moses and say, Moses, I want to go on here, some man. What is going on here, Moses? You said the inheritance must only go to the sons. But here we are, and our father didn't have any sons. So who is going to get his inheritance? Why can't we get his inheritance? Are you telling us that we don't know we don't know how to handle money? Are you telling us that we don't know how to handle land? We don't know what to do with land if we get it? Is that what you're telling us? And subsequent to that, Moses modified the law. Moses modified the law and gave Zelophehad's daughters Zelophehad's inheritance. So, is it the same thing here, where the God that Anna and Dinah and Doug serve will look at it and say, well, you know what? She was raped. So because she was raped, it is excusable for her to have this abortion. Is that is that how it is? How it's going to be? It seems like it to me. Because Anna is adamant that Dinah has the abortion. Doug is adamant that Dinah has the abortion. Yet, they are still Christians who don't believe in abortion. So I don't know how they're going to navigate that conflict. But Dinah and their grandmother seems to not be in for the abortion at all. Dinah says she can't make her mind up, and I don't know when she's gonna make up her mind, because when she make up her mind, that baby gonna have teeth and crawling. Because she's now like, well, 4.5 months. She's in her second trimester, and she hasn't made up her mind yet. So it seems to me like she's going to end up carrying that baby to full term. And I know that she's feeling the baby kicking. She's bonding with the baby. It's making it much harder for her to go through with that abortion. But we are going to continue. Come out tonight. Tonight never did so cold. But me just seem like every time I walk in every time I walk in the cold, it seems like me cough again. I don't know. But anyway, nothing was going to stop me from coming tonight to come read this book for us, because because I am just as curious as you all are to find out what has happened, what will happen with Dinah and this baby. And boy, guys, for those of you who have been following this story, that dog, I don't know what to say about dog. That's Dinah's father. I don't know what to say for him. He just seems like one of those hateful, bitter men who just can't let anything go. You know, he I don't know how Anna lived with him for almost 30 years. I couldn't do it. Every time he's going to bring up about the abortion, who wants to hear about that over and over? I'm sure she doesn't want to hear about it. She already told you it was already a secret. Lord, leave it right there and let it remain a secret. Why you keep on bringing it up over and over and over again to remind the woman that she also had an abortion? You shouldn't be reminding her of that repeatedly. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. That is not okay. But it is what it is. And a lot of people live with people who continue to torment. A lot of people live with persons who continue to torment them with secrets they had told them, and they don't care. They just torment the daylights out of their partner with no regret. With absolutely no regret. They don't care. They absolutely don't care. But anywho, we are going to continue to read the book. And guys, you all know that I folded the page where I left off this morning. But no, we can't find it. Whenever you're not like these people. But welcome into the live nonetheless, guys. Welcome into the live. Fly Girl Georgia, Kat is asking you, how are you doing? I hope you're feeling better, my love. Good to see you. Good to see you. Sister Winsome and Liz and Kat. I wonder where's Jojo. And for those of you over here, Cassie, Paul, BK, Hot Gal, Dave, Paulette, and the others, welcome. Thank you. McCoy, Nikki, Michael, Yolanda, and the others. Thank you all so much for coming. Tonight we are I'm doing this double string, which I don't usually do, but I'm doing it. But I'm doing it tonight because oftentimes I can't find the time separately to come on the talk when I'm on the tube all the time. So therefore, I am double streaming. Yeah. So I'm actually reading a book that's called The Anointed Child For those of you over here on the talk, it might be brand new to you. I don't think I've ever read any of this book over here, but on the tube we read this book almost every day. And so we are going to continue with the reading of this book. For those of you who are just coming who don't know what the book is about, well, the book is about a Christian child. A Christian young lady was brought up in the church. She was born and raised in the church. Both of her parents insist that she remain holy and pure throughout her life, which she has. And then she goes to college and she meets a guy who is training to become a pastor. And he is one of the brightest stars among all the stars that are planning to become pastors. And they get engaged, and all in a sudden disaster strikes where somebody assaulted this young woman, and subsequently she became pregnant from the assault. And now she is in terrible conflict because the young man whom she was dating, he insisted that she gets an abortion. And that has caused the whole story to be in a pickle, because here he is training to be a pastor. Here she is with an unwanted pregnancy, and there he is encouraging her to have an abortion. She doesn't want to. She gives him back the ring. Administrators have asked her to leave the school because it's a Christian school. You can't be pregnant and unwed. And so she has gone back home to her parents. Her mother is encouraging her to have the abortion. Her father is determined that she must have the abortion because, according to him, he's going to be the one taking care of this child, and he's not in for that. He's not in for taking care of this child. And worst of all, they are concerned about whether or not the person who assaulted her, they are concerned whether the person was black. They have all kinds of concerns. So they really don't want to see this baby at all. They don't want to have anything to do with this baby. But the poor daughter is so conflicted. Her Christian values are in conflict with the necessity that I think would be a necessity if I were in her position. It would definitely be a necessity for me to not, you know what I mean. Okay. Because every time for the rest of my life, when I look at that baby, when I look at that child, I'm going to remember the torment and the torture. I mean, I don't know, to each his own. Y'all decide what y'all would do. But I know what I would do if I found myself in that predicament. So anyway, guys, I'm going to share out the live and calling on people them to come and listen to me read this book. Y'all know that's what I love to do. Have my head in a book morning, noon, and night, reading something. But anyway, we're going to continue with the reading, even though I can't find where I left off yesterday. God, can you believe it? I know I folded the page, and for the love of me and all things good, it seems like the person who read this book before me, they folded every page, every leaf as well. So here I am with a book with a dozen folded pages, and I'm not sure which one was mine. I'm not sure which one was mine. But anyway, whether we read it or we read a part of it again, we're still gonna read it. Let me find the next chapter over and let us read, whatever the case may be. AG, I was waiting on you, that's why you see me here talking and not going anywhere, because I was waiting for you. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming home. My daughter says she could listen to you read all day. Oh, that is so sweet. Tell her I say thanks very much. Thank you very much, Nisi. Thank you very much. So here we are. We are going to continue reading. Yeah, I'm just going to read right here because I can't find where I was. I hope I'm not too far back reading. Oh, I know I passed right here already. Y'all ever hear nothing like this? Y'all ever hear anything like this? Read the book, fold the page, and come back to the book, and the page is missing. The page is gone. But anyway, we will catch up. Even if we miss a little piece of it, we will catch on. Joe folded the note slowly and handed it back to Hannah. As she called, Hannah took the note. Once, she said bleakly, tucking it safely into her skirt pocket again. Doug and I were in church. She left a message on the answering machine. I'll let you hear it. Joe rose and followed her into the kitchen. She pressed a button. Joe heard Dinah's voice. Quiet, tense, anything but all right. I know you're both in church right now, and I'm sorry to call like this. I'm just not ready to hear what you have to say about what I have done. Hold on, hold on. About God says a bad word. God says a bad workman blames his tools. You hear that, AG? God say you're a bad workman, that's why you blame your tool. Forgive me. Forgive me, guys. OMG. Let me continue, guys. Don't distract me, please. The people are listening to me read. But y'all are so distracting. You're so misbehaving. I don't know what to do with y'all. But anywho, let's continue. Joe followed Dinah's mother into the family room and saw a man he recognized as Dinah's father sitting in an easy chair, staring at the television. A baseball game was blaring. Someone had just hit a grand slam, but the man registered no interest. Doug, this is Joe Guillermo, a friend of Dinah's. Doug looked up at the young man, as surprised by his appearance as Hannah had been. He reminded Doug of the guy on the TV show about immortals and swordplay. Tough, ready for anything. He rose and extended his hand. Joe Guillermo's handshake was hard and firm, his eyes direct. Doug nodded once. Nice to meet you, Joe. Have a seat. I'll get some coffee, Hannah said and headed for the kitchen. Doug sank into his easy chair again, at a loss for words. He glanced at the television set. I take it you are not an A's fan, Joe said with a half smile, the TV announcer talking over the replay of the Grand Slam. I have season tickets, Doug said flatly. He picked up the remote control and punched a button. The room fell into silence. Doug looked at the young man sitting on his couch and studied him again. Joe Guillermo had an air of confidence about him. He didn't sit uneasy, but was relaxed, open, clearly concerned. Dinah mentioned you, Doug said. He couldn't remember the context. I roomed with Ethan. Oh, yeah, that's right. You are the ex-gang member from Los Angeles, aren't you? Oh, Lord, these people are just good at bringing up people's past. What's wrong? What's wrong with this man? Why did he have to bring up Joe's past like that? OMG. Me no business where you want to say me read it already. Me I read it again. So listen. Joe laughed An easy sound at once, admitting guilt and showing redemption. Yes, sir, that's me. What brings you to San Francisco? Dinah, Joe said frankly. Mr. and Mrs. Carey might as well know where he's coming from. I graduated on the 9th and headed for California the next morning. I'm going to be taking some postgraduate courses at Berkeley. Berkeley? Doug said, impressed. It's a little different from NLC, like walking out of a hothouse and falling into the compost pile. Doug smiled. He liked this young man. There was something about him that eased his mind and heart. I have a feeling you'll stay on the right track. With God's help, you know. But now, about Dinah. Mrs. Carey said you don't know where she is. Are the police doing anything about it? Nothing. Nothing? Hannah came back into the room with her tray. Joe glanced at her and smiled. She smiled back. She didn't know why, but she trusted him. Dinah left us a note explaining why she felt she had to leave. She leaned down with the tray so Joe could take a mug of coffee and sugar or cream if he wanted. He took his coffee black with a murmured thanks. And she's 20, Doug added grimly. That makes her an adult. If you don't mind my asking, sir, what did her letter say? Anna glanced at Doug. Go ahead and show him. She set the tray down on the coffee table and took a single sheet of folded paper from her skirt pocket. She handed it to Joe. It was worn from reading. Now, guys, for those of you who have been following the story, y'all remember that when when Dinah first tried to do that silly thing, Joe was the one who found her. So Joe is understandably concerned, but he doesn't want to divulge that information to Dinah's parents that she had once tried to do that silly thing. So that's why he's being curious and cautious at the same time. He's asking to read the note because he wants to know whether or not the note has any indication that Dinah is going to try again. If I was not listening, I wouldn't know that you. Thank you, AG. You are simply the best. You are the best. Thank you for keeping me on track. Dear Mom and Dad and Granny, I love you all very much, and I can't bear to hear you fighting over me. It's best if I leave. I need to make my decisions. When I do, the responsibility will rest on my head and no one else's. I promise I'll be careful wherever I go. Please try not to worry. I'm a big girl. I can take care of myself. Please, please love one another. I can't bear to think that what's happened to me will tear you all apart. I'd rather die than have that happen. I'll call you when I'm settled. Dinah. Andrea, how are you doing, my love? No. You missed that yesterday not being in the Bible quiz. Let me tell you all something. In the card is not going to be there all the time to receive you all. Because card listens to the reading and you all listen to the reading as well. And yesterday in the Bible quiz was a dismal shame. That you all couldn't answer those simple questions. Y'all better not let it happen again. If y'all let it happen again, I'm gonna send you all to pick your own switch. But anywho, let us continue. Joe folded the note slowly and handed it back to Hannah. Has she called? Hannah took the note. Once, she said bleakly, tucking it safely into her skirt pocket again. Doug and I were in church. She left a message on the answering machine. I'll let you hear it. Joe rose and followed her into the kitchen. She pressed the button. Joe heard Dinah's voice. Quiet, tense, anything but all right. I know you're both in church right now, and I'm sorry to call like this. I'm just not ready to hear what you have to say about what I've done. Oh God, Joe thought. She did it. He heard Dinah sigh. She sounded tired, depressed. I just wanted to let you know I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. She didn't say anything for a minute. Joe heard 3 cars pass in the background. He figured she was in a telephone booth somewhere. I'm sorry I felt the way I did, she said softly. Her voice choked, but it's better this way. She was silent again. He could feel the heaviness of her heart through the wires. I love you. I love you very, very much. Click. That's all, Hannah said coarsely. She listened to it several times a day just to hear the sound of her daughter's voice. Hannah's mother had gone home to Oregon after a week. Most of the time she had spent upstairs in the guest room, weeping and praying for Dinah. Each one of them felt blame for Dinah's flight, though none of them had changed their opinion about what she should do. Evie was still adamantly against Dinah having an abortion. Doug was as strong in his conviction that it was the only course to take. And Hannah, she was torn between the two, trusting Jim Wyatt more than a husband or mother. Joe stayed for 2 hours, Hannah sitting beside him, showing him albums of Dinah, from newborn to young womanhood. These were taken at Pigeon Point. These were taken at Dillon Beach. These were taken at Mendocino. That was at Fort Bragg. Page after page he turned, seeing Dinah's face, seeing her grow, his heart aching for her. God, protect her, please. Keep her in the palm of your hands. Put a hedge around her. Send your angels to watch over her. This was one taken last summer, Hannah said. Joe looked down at Dinah standing with Ethan, his arms around her shoulders. He looked proud and proprietary. The perfect couple, until real life got in the way. It hadn't taken Ethan long to find another picture-perfect girl. Mary looked a lot like Dinah, tall, slender, blonde, blue-eyed. Not as pretty, but she was a virgin and proud of it. Joe had been torn between anger and relief when Ethan introduced him to Mary at the student union. Though Ethan had only taken her out twice at the time, the writing on the wall was plain. Block letters, bold-faced, matrimony. Ethan was right, and Mary was ready. Oh, Lord. That I know would drive Dinah crazy. To think that you had saved yourself and then you get so close to your dream, only to have someone snatch it away from you without even any warning. That has to be quite devastating. God says that prayer seems to be a little bit too late. Well, better late than never. But I hope she hasn't done anything to herself. I hope not. But we will continue reading and we will see. God's timing is so perfect, Ethan had said, and Joe had wanted to hit him. It was nothing against Mary. She was a beautiful girl and a committed Christian. But Joe couldn't help wondering how deep Ethan's love went and how quickly the flame would die at the first hint of trouble. Maybe the two of them would be lucky and live in a church all their lives. doors locked, stained glass over all the windows. They had better not have many parishioners. Real people disappoint and disillusion. Joe had done the only thing he could do. He wished them both well, packed up, and headed west. And Christmas, Hannah said, breaking into his grim thoughts. He gazed down at a picture of Dinah setting the table, another of her decorating the tree with two friends from church. She was laughing, happy, eyes bright, so beautiful. It hurt. Where would she go, Lord? God, you helped me find her once. Please help me find her again. He remembered something Dinah had said at the Prairie Reserve. Mind if I look at those albums again? Of course not. Hannah handed him 3 albums from the coffee table. Joe paged through each one slowly, studying the scenes around Dinah this time. And he knew where he was going to start looking. Dinah wakened in a rundown motel on Highway 1, north of Fort Bragg. She had spent most of the night tossing and turning, wondering what she was going to do about a job. The area was depressed, with 17% unemployment. People with more qualifications than she had were out pounding the pavement. She didn't qualify for unemployment benefits. The clerk said she was sorry, but there were no jobs available. Those that opened up would go to locals receiving unemployment checks. The lady suggested she apply for welfare, but Dinah, she was too ashamed to follow through on that idea. She had spent her life listening to her father talking about people who had no pride and took advantage of the system. She didn't want to be someone sucking up the hard earned dollars of those who worked for a living. Her father said that was why California was in such a financial mess. He said there were always jobs to be had somewhere if one wanted one. Where, Daddy? I've been looking for 2 weeks. I've talked to every business owner in Mendocino, including at all the bed and breakfast. She could make beds and clean houses, but most people said they were having to handle it themselves to save cost. She had been pounding the pavement in Fort Bragg for the past few days and was having no better luck. Now she found herself down to her last $10 and her car was running on fumes. At least she had paid for this room through Friday, 2 more days. Lord, I need help. I've been asking and asking and asking. Do you want me to go back home? You know what's waiting for me there if I do. What am I going to do, Lord? What am I going to do? The baby moved. She put her hands lightly over her swollen abdomen, her heart leaping with an odd mingling of joy and terror. Realization struck. She took her hands away quickly and sat up, pushing her hair back from her face. She wouldn't be in all this trouble if not for the baby she was carrying. Guilt gripped her as she stood and went into the bathroom. Vulture, what's up? How are you doing, Vulture? Good night to you, sis. How are you doing? She stood in the shower for a long time, letting the warm water wash over her. It couldn't wash away her fear or her despair. I have just enough money to fill up my car. I could drive south towards Jenna and go right off that high cliff into the ocean. It would look like an accident, wouldn't it? No one would feel to blame. Turning the water up hotter, she tried to ward off the chill. Her skin was pink when she finally stepped out of the tub and dried herself. She caught a glimpse of herself in a long mirror on the door and stopped. Frowning, she lowered the towel and looked at her body. In another month, she wouldn't be able to hide her condition at all. Who was going to hire an unwed girl in the advanced stages of pregnancy? Dressing in an ankle-length flowered skirt and pale yellow tunic sweater, Dinah sat on the edge of her bed and picked up her Bible. She had been reading the Psalms, taking what comfort she could in David's anguish and frustration. More than half the songs were written when he was depressed, or running from enemies, or suffering from the sin he had allowed to come into his own life. Oh Lord, sometimes I know how David feels. Where are you when I need you? Why do you seem so far away? Why are you so silent? I can count my blessings from morning till night. I can remember all the things you have done for me from the time I was a little child. I remember and I cry out to you, and you are nowhere to be found. She really does sound like David because, guys, for those of you who have been with me while I've been reading the Psalm, you know that in the Psalm, the psalmists, the people who wrote those Psalms, they are all crying out to God. Where are you? Look how I have served you. Why are you allowing the enemy to overthrow me? It's the same kind of cry like poor Dinah. I have lost my joy. The only hope I have is the salvation you have given me through Jesus. And the only way I can be with you is to die. Everybody wanna go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. But God no. She remembered Joe again. How would he feel if she drove off that cliff a few miles north of Jenna? Would he think it was an accident? No. Would her parents believe it? Never. Weary, she put her Bible back on the nightstand, put on her socks and shoes, and went out to try to find work again. Deciding it would be more economical to walk, she parked her car on the north end of Fort Bragg. She would have breakfast at Marianne's Cafe. It looked inexpensive. Then she would knock on every door and ask for work until she reached the bridge at the far end of town. Then she'd come back up the other side, doing the same thing. She had already applied at the larger stores and businesses and would pass by them. She opened the door of the cafe. A bell jangled just above her head, announcing her entrance. Small, empty tables lined the front windows. One old man sat at the corner. The place smelled of Chinese food. A young man came out from the back room. She was young, thin, had short black hair, and was dressed in faded Levi's and a t-shirt that said Hard Rock Cafe, San Francisco. She took a menu from one of the counter racks and swept her hand about the empty room. Take your pick. Dinah hesitated, wishing she had chosen another place to eat. Maybe people in Fort Bragg knew something about this place that she didn't. Maybe the health department had just been here and threatened to shut them down. Maybe the last people who had eaten here were suffering from food poisoning. Chinese food for breakfast? It's good food, the waitress said. I can swear by it. And it's cheap. Too embarrassed to turn around and leave, Dinah gave her a tentative smile and chose a seat by one of the front windows so she could watch the cars go by. The waitress put the menu down in front of her. The American breakfast includes 2 eggs, sausage or bacon, hash browns, and toast for $2.99. Includes coffee and juice, orange or tomato. That sounds fine, Dinah said, not bothering to look at the menu. Orange, please. Cream with the coffee? Please. Do you have decaf? I can brew a pot. Oh, don't trouble yourself. No trouble. She glanced down over Dinah. Coffee isn't good for you. As the waitress walked by, Dinah glanced at the board with the day's luncheon specials. blushing, blushing and hoping the old man at the counter hadn't overheard the remark. He was looking at her. When he lost interest, she glanced around again, noting a chalkboard with luncheon selections: Mongolian beef, sweet and sour pork, and fried rice for $3.49. Other selections include broccoli and beef, egg drop soup, chow mein, and cashew chicken. The last item on the board was an American hamburger with French fries and coleslaw for $4.99. She could hear two men behind the partition to the kitchen arguing in Chinese. The waitress brought a tray back to Dinah. She set down a tumbler of ice water, a glass of orange juice, and a small pitcher of cream. Fresh. The cow's out back. Just kidding. Coffee will be ready in 2 minutes. Dinah could hear the hiss of something hitting the grill as the two men continued to argue. Oh Lord, what made me choose this place? Why didn't I walk a few more blocks and find one that had cars around it and people inside? The coffee was good. Well, better than good. When breakfast arrived, Dinah was amazed. Everything was fresh and delicious and prepared perfectly. The waitress kept her mug full and offered her a second glass of juice. No charge. Everything's fine. Everything's wonderful, Dinah said, unable to understand why the place wasn't packed. She finally decided to ask. Because it's Marianne's. I beg your pardon? You're not from around here, are you? Dinah shook her head. Well, Marianne owned this place for 30 years. Everybody in Fort Bragg knows and loves her. Well, she retired. No family to take over the business. Nobody around here had money enough to buy it. So along comes my boss, a boat person. Note the sort out of the Moya Harbor? I don't mean a fisherman. I mean one of those Vietnamese who came to the United States. He's a good guy. Not that everybody's given him much of a chance. A gook. That's what some people call him. Won't do business with a gook, you know. A lot of angry vets up here, out of work and looking for someone to blame. Charlie makes a good target. Charlie? She smiled slightly and he Americanized his name. It hasn't helped, but at least I don't have to try to pronounce his Vietnamese name. She laughed. He's cool. Worked hard for 10 years to save enough money to buy this little dump. And it looks like it's going to go bust. It's not fair. She shrugged, looking disheartened. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, you know. I guess. Bad part is, I'm leaving for San Francisco today. My husband got a job down there. First job he has had in a year of looking. He found us a place. Charlie's in a fit back there with Ho Chi Minh, his brother. That's not his name. Just what I call him sometimes. Really bugs him. But he can get his dander up. Listen to him. Criminy. He notified the unemployment office 2 weeks ago when I gave my notice, and not one person has bothered to apply. He's royally ticked and ready to go declare war. Lot of good it will do him. Thanks for the likes, guys. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you. Dinah blinked. I need a job. You don't say. Really? Yes, really. Well, I'll warn you, the pay is not great. It's minimum wage. Hardly any tips. Gotta have customers to get tips, right? She jerked her head towards the old man at the counter. Harvey will leave you a quarter. He's a nice old man. A quarter for the coffee and a quarter tip. Every morning of the week, he comes in at 8. You can set your clock by him. I've been looking for work for 2 weeks. I've just about given up hope. When would you like to start? Dinah gave a soft laugh. How about right now? The waitress turned around. Hey, Charlie, I've got a live one. She grinned at Dinah. He won't know what that means. He is still working on his English. You sit tight. I'll go get him. My name's Susan, by the way. Oh, I'm Dinah. Dinah Carey. Susan left the coffee pot on the table. Charlie came out 30 seconds after Susan went back. A small, wiry man with black hair and a gold-capped tooth in front. He shook her hand. The man behind the partition called out something, and Charlie called something back. It sounded like a cook was running a spoon back and forth on some pots and pans. Susan rolled her eyes, then got a little excited. Then they got a little excited. You'll get used to them. Don't worry. Dinah was feeling good, really good for the first time in weeks. Minimum wage wasn't much, but it was enough to keep body and soul together. Joseph, I was looking for you. How are you doing, my love? Good to see you, my darling. You come at the right time, Dinah Carey, Charlie said. If you not come today, tomorrow I be waiting tables, and then nobody come, not even Harvey. Harvey laughed, unabashed. He turned on his stool and looked straight at him. He didn't care if they knew he was listening. She's pretty enough to bring you some customers, Charlie. What's wrong with me? Susan said, hands on her hips. Am I chopped liver or something? You are cute too, honey. Mouthy, but cute. We're glad to make your acquaintance, Charlie said, pumping Dinah's hand. I'll show Dinah the ropes, Susan said. Ropes? Charlie gave her a blank look and glanced around. What ropes? Guys, that reminds me of an interview I was watching on TV, and the interviewee, I forget who it was, Sofia Vergara. I forget who it was, but it was one of those Spanish actors or actresses. It was a Spanish person in Hollywood was being interviewed, and they were asking him how was it learning English as an adult and then acting in movies that only had English script. And he was giving a joke and said the first time that he had met with his agent and stuff, and they were talking about a skeleton in a closet, and he was like, I was so scared because they said there was a skeleton in the closet. And I'm like, what are these people talking about? Is there somebody dead in the closet? So that's how it is when you have to learn a second language. Every single word seems literal to you. It's not until you get the hang of the language that you understand the phrases and what they mean, and you understand that not everything is literal. So here it is that Susan is telling Charlie that she will show Dinah the ropes, and here is Charlie looking to see if there's any ropes in the restaurant. I'll show Dinah the ropes, Susan said. Ropes? Charlie gave her a blank look and glanced around. What ropes? Susan grinned at Dinah and patted Charlie's shoulder. Never mind, Charlie. I'll train her. All right. Don't you worry about anything. Charlie took Dinah's tab. Meal free. 3 squares a day. Very good for you and baby. Dinah blushed. Charlie headed back to the kitchen. Don't worry about it, Susan said gently. You are in good company. Joe drove all through Mendocino looking for Dinah's car. He spotted several of the same make, year, and model, but they were the wrong color and bore no fish symbol on the back or NLC sticker in the window. He parked and walked the streets crowded with summer tourists, asking business owners if she had come in looking for work. Several remembered her but didn't know if she had stayed in the area. He camped at a salt he camped at Salt Point and went to church in Mendocino on Sunday morning. It was a small, quaint church with a high steepled New England design, the oldest on the West Coast, a historical landmark. Dinah wasn't in attendance. Since there was no other Christian church in the town, he figured she must have attended services elsewhere, probably up the coast at Fort Bragg. He drove north and had a hamburger at McDonald's. Maybe she headed home. He found a payphone and called the Careys. No, she's not there, Joe. She's not there. She called again this morning while we were gone, Dinah's mother had told him. She sounded better this time, Joe. She found a place to live. She didn't say where. She said she had a job, but not what. She didn't leave a number. She wasn't on the line for very long. Dinah enjoyed her new job. The first few days were slow, and Harvey was the only regular. He came in every morning at 8 o'clock, just as Susan had said he would. Dinah kept his coffee replenished while he read his newspaper. Sometimes he chatted with her about his years in the lumbering trade. From 8:30 until just past 10, tourists came into the cafe, pausing in their scenic drive south, and Dinah was kept busy taking orders and serving. The tips were good. People tended to be generous to a pregnant waitress, especially one as young as she was. As to lodgings, Dinah stayed where she was, content in the small motel above Highway 1. The manager was kind enough to hold winter rates for her on the agreement that Dinah would do her own housekeeping and handle a portion of the laundry. Each evening, following a long day of waiting tables, Dinah would tend the washing machine and dryer. Propping her feet up to ease the swelling, she would read her Bible while waiting for the wash cycle to end or the dryer to shut off. She usually finished her share of the workload by 10 and went to bed immediately afterwards. Sunday was her only full day off. Exhausted, she attended the later services of a different church each week. Parishioners were friendly and curious. She didn't feel like talking about her circumstances and usually sat in the back, where she could leave quietly and unobserved as soon as the worship services ended. Sometimes she departed before the pastor or priest made the walk to the door to give their blessings to attendees. She didn't know what to do about the baby. All she knew was the problem wouldn't go away. Each day made it grow each day made it grow larger. She was confused about everything. She hadn't been to see a doctor since the first weeks of pregnancy. Since she wasn't on welfare, she didn't think she was eligible for a free clinic, even if there was one in Fort Bragg. She didn't have the money for doctor visits, let alone a hospital delivery. Sun kiss, you come to give me a kiss. Mwah. How are you doing, love? Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Oh, well, I got the number one, Mr. Budge. I have been good, my love. I have been good. I just haven't been over here like I know I should. I've been over on the tube, so I just, you know, I just live one day at a time. One day at a time, my love. You miss me, I know. I know, my love. I'm so sorry. I know I have been missed. A lot of people have missed you. So, Trey, where you been? Why you? Poor me. Yes, Alante, you know, come see me over the tube. Don't worry yourself. When I'm on the tube, I'm going to try to be on the tube and over here at the same time. Because I can't find separate times to be one time over here and one time over there. And since I'm always over there, may as well. Just run it over there and run it over here at the same time and keep it going. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. To use one stone and literally kill two birds. You know what I mean? What was she going to do when the baby came? Have it in her motel room without assistance? Then what? Leave the baby on a church doorstep in the hope that someone might take it in? No questions asked? Oh God, what am I going to do? She lay on the bed in her motel room night after night, staring at the ceiling, worrying about the future. The long hours on her feet working took a toll on her. Tonight she had fallen asleep in the laundry, the hum and roll of the dryer mesmerizing. Her back ached, her feet and ankles were swollen, her head ached. A long hot shower helped ease her sore muscles. Climbing wearily into bed, she tucked an extra pillow between her knees to ease the ache in her lower back. Closing her eyes, she drifted off to sleep, only to find herself back in the clinic. Miss Chambers blocking her way out. Her mother was at her side, holding her hand, drawing her towards an examination room where Dr. Wyatt waited. He was wearing a white coat and pulling on rubber gloves. Let me tell you something, guys. If you have ever been pregnant when you think you weren't supposed to be, it is one of the hardest things to deal with. And that is why I'm so sympathetic with teenage mothers. Because trust me, I've been there, done that. You well want to know that tomorrow morning when you wake up, you haven't done anything, but you are no longer pregnant. You hope and you pray and you wish that something would happen, like some miracle would just happen and you would no longer be pregnant. So I can understand Dinah's dilemma. And worse, to think that she was raped in getting this pregnancy and she didn't even know her attacker. She didn't even see his face. I can only imagine the grief and the pain. It will only take a few minutes and it will be all over. Dinah could hear the sound of a machine in the background, like water being sucked down a drain. Someone was screaming. Was she the only one who heard it? How could they all stand and look so calm when someone was crying out like that? It's not so bad, Dr. Wyatt had said. I don't want to do it. Miss Chambers glared at her in contempt. Don't be such a coward. I did it. Why shouldn't you have to do it too? You can't come home, her mother said. Daddy won't let you. I can't do it. Dinah broke free and ran into the corridor. Ethan was sitting in a chair, his head in his hands. He looked up at her, his face streaked with tears. You shouldn't have been, you should have been my wife, but you are not good enough anymore. Turning away, she saw her father standing at the counter. I told you to get rid of it. It's a monster, and I won't have it in my house. Oh my. Crying, she ran down the hall, trying to find a way out. All the doors were locked. This sounds like a dream. Poor Dinah. Poor Dinah. The hall turned to the right, and then to the left, and then to the right again, pushing it open. Another door was on the other side, and Janet was standing in front of it. I don't see why you're making such an issue of it, Dinah. If anyone has the right, you do. Besides, it's no big thing. Everybody's doing it. Dinah pushed past her to the door. When she opened it, she fell headlong into Dean Abernathy's office. He was in the process of shuffling stacks of paper on his desk. As she tumbled to the floor, she stopped and stared down at her. She's in here. She's in here. She could hear the sound of running feet coming closer and closer, and she clambered to her feet. Dean Abernathy stood and came around his desk. Poor Dinah, what a dream. Poor Dinah. Jappy, what's up? What's up, fam? How you doing? How are you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. Welcome. How you been? How you been, my love? Good to see you. Dinah sat up abruptly, bathed in perspiration, her heart pounding. Trembling, she drew the blankets more tightly around her and listened. The room was dark and quiet. The digital alarm clock on the bedside table was reading 3:45. How long? How long, oh Lord? How long will you forsake me? I'm alone. I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. How is it I felt your presence all my life, and now you are nowhere to be found? Was my relationship with you an illusion? Were the stories of you merely fairy tales told to me by my mother and my father? Where is your protection? Where is your mercy? Oh God, where are you? Oh gosh, I feel like crying for Dinah, guys. I feel like crying for poor Dinah. OMG. Oh gosh. Unable to sleep, she got up at 5 and showered again. It was Sunday, but she didn't feel like attending church. Instead, she drove down to the coast to Mendocino. She parked on Custon Street in front of the bakery. Hungry, she purchased a freshly baked apple fritter and a tall styrofoam cup of steaming French roast coffee laced with cream. Wandering along Main Street, she paused to admire the Kelly House, a Victorian restored by citizens of the community and made into a museum. It wouldn't open for hours yet. Across the street was Jerome B. Ford House, a state museum. Beyond were the trails along the cliffs overlooking Portuguese Beach. She walked the meandering path through the grasses to the point. A lumber mill had stood here 100 years ago when Mendocino was a bustling community made up of seafaring men from New England, Scandinavia, Portugal, China, and the Azores. Immigrants had flooded California during the gold rush. By the 1880s, mining and whaling had diminished, but the waves still came, bringing farmers, fishermen, and loggers. She stood at the edge of the point, watching the waves crash on the rocks. White spray bursting into the air, foam swirling, the cool mist stinging her cheeks. She drew her jacket more closely around her, awed by the power of the sea. Oh Lord God, who is like you? You are almighty, creator of heaven and earth. Your faithfulness surrounds me. You rule the swelling sea. When its waves rise, only you can still them. Lord, Aldana doing his praying. Oh Lord, poor thing. Closing her eyes, she lifted her face, feeling the salt wind caress her. Opening her arms, she opened her heart to the Lord as well. And when she could hear his voice again, "Oh Lord, oh God, oh Father, I have treasured your words in my heart so that I might not sin against you. But now I see I haven't heeded that word. That's why I've been so distressed. That's why I've received no answer to my prayers. Oh God, all this time I've been asking your permission to end the life of this child. I've asked you to take it from me. I've asked for your approval of sin. Forgive me, Lord. Please forgive me. My God, you have never forsaken me. I'm the one who turned away from you. So God, please forgive me. Oh Oh, Father, I long for you. Sometimes I wish you were here in body. Sometimes I wish I could feel your arms around me, holding me. Oh, dear God, open my eyes that I may behold the wonderful things you have done for me. Set my feet upon the rock, Lord. Anchor me in your love. My faith is weak, as I am weak. You alone are my strength and my shield. You alone, Lord. You alone. Jo found her car and parked beside it. It was early yet. Stores were closed, streets were empty. Only a few restaurants and cafes were open. The doorbell jangled as he entered the bakery. The waitress said a girl who fit the description he gave had come in and purchased an apple fritter and coffee an hour ago. Borrowing a pen, he wrote a quick note on a napkin. Hold tight. I'm looking for you. Joe. He stuck it under the windshield wiper of Dinah's car and started off. He hadn't gone 20 feet when he came back, popping open her hood. He pulled out the rotor and pocketed it. He wasn't taking any chances. Oh, Joe is so smart. So Joe actually disabled Dinah's car. So if Dinah came back and was trying to leave, yes, Liz, here comes Joe. If Dinah comes back and is going to try to leave, the car won't start because Joe has put the rotor in his pocket. He wasn't taking any chances. Walking briskly along Main Street, he passed a dozen people out taking morning strolls. Across the street were the Mendocino headlands and the cliffs overlooking the big river, the bay, and the Grand Pacific for as far as the eyes could see. Several pairs of joggers were running the trails. Then Joe stopped, narrowing his eyes. Someone was out there, standing on the far point, looking at the Pacific Ocean. Long blonde hair twirled in the wind. Yes, Joe said under his breath. Thanking God, he crossed the street and strode towards her. When he came closer, he slowed, watching how she wrapped her arms around herself as the wind came up. Her ankle-length flowing skirt fluttered around her slender legs. She was wearing hiking boots and thick socks. As though feeling his presence, she turned. Joe watched her eyes widen in surprise. He smiled, walking towards her. "Joe!" she said, clearly unable to believe she was really seeing him. He stopped in front of her, drinking in the sight of drinking in the sight of her. Her cheeks were wind-stung pink, her blue eyes solemn. She had lost the hunted look. "Hi," he said. When her arms loosened about herself, he put his arms around her, his heart taking a flip when he felt her hands slid around his back, returning the embrace. He felt the fullness of her body and thanked God again. She hadn't given in after all. Praise God. Dinah leaned into him, savoring his warmth, feeling his hand lightly cup the back of her head, moving down over her back in a comforting caress. "What are you doing here, Joe? You broke a date. The 15th, remember?" She withdrew. "Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry." He smiled, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "I forgive you. How did you find me? You talked about this area at the Prairie Reserve, remember? And your mom showed me the family albums. I stared at Dillon Beach and worked my way north. Oh, Joe, all that trouble?" "No trouble, no trouble at all." He tipped her chin up playfully. "You look good, Dinah. Really good. I guess she got the pregnancy glow, huh?" Blushing, she laughed self-consciously. "Growing by the day," she said, and opened her coat. "You are doing the right thing." She closed the coat around her again to ward off the cool wind. Don't credit me with anything, Joe. I haven't been able to make up my mind up to this point. And now I'll go through with it, whatever it takes. They walked along the cliff trail and down the beach. The sun was up, clouds clearing, the wind a whisper over the sand where the big river met Mendocino Bay. The day warmed. Dinah removed her coat and sat down on it. She took off her hiking boots and socks and stretched her legs out in front of her, pulling her skirt up so that her knees and calves took in the sunshine. You look tired, Joe said. I haven't been sleeping very well after all. And no wonder, he thought, having to make it all on her own. Have you seen a doctor? She shook her head. Not since leaving school. We'll get you an appointment. She looked at him. We? She smiled faintly. Are you going to take me, Joe? Are you going to solve all my problems? You think I've been looking for you just to say hi and bye? Albert, ¿cómo está mi amor? Lisa is going to be too late. I don't think she's going to do the abortion again. I think she's going to keep the baby. But I have a funny feeling that if Joe wasn't the perpetrator, that Joe is going to end up falling in love with her and probably marrying her. I don't know. But remember, Joe knows the ropes of the road because remember, Joe was a gang member. So Joe is not someone who was raised like Ethan was. Ethan was raised in the straight and narrow. He doesn't know any life other than the Christian life that he was raised in. But Joe, on the other hand, Joe knows real life. So he has been on both sides of the fence. He went from a gangbanger to a Christian, going to a Christian college and doing pretty well. So Joe is more of a real deal than Ethan, if you ask me. Let us continue. She searched his eyes. I know we are friends, Joe, but there's more, isn't there? Why does it matter so much to you that I have this baby? Joe had known she'd ask him someday, just as he had known he'd have to answer, at least in part, the rest in time, God willing. I got a girl pregnant when I was 17. She had an abortion. She closed her eyes and raised her knees, drawing her skirt down like a silken tent, wrapping her arms around her legs. Did you love her? He looked out at the waves crashing on the rocks across the bay. No. Sighing, he lowered his head and closed his eyes. Sex was the big thing with me in those days. He glanced at Dinah, relieved to see she didn't look disgusted. I'm listening, Joe. He didn't like talking about his past, but she needed to know. It was a gang thing, making conquests. The guys considered an illegitimate baby a trophy. Children were a physical proof of manhood. He shook his head in disgust. I bought into the whole mentality until Teresa got pregnant. Then reality struck hard. He spoke slowly. She didn't want to have the baby. She was afraid her parents would kick her out. My mother said she'd take her in. She even offered to adopt the baby. Teresa said she'd think about it and let me know. She called me 2 days later and told me she had had an abortion. His dark eyes filled with tears. It still gets me in the gut sometimes. I've heard all the rhetoric about it being her body, her choice, and I understand all that. The trouble is, you can't reason away some things. You can't alter human nature. That baby was mine too, part of my flesh and blood. When Teresa aborted that baby, it was like she killed a part of me. Did you hate her for it? Yeah, I hated her for a long time. His mouth tipped in self-contempt. Now, guys, I'm going to pause right there because that right there brings about another question. That brings about another question. You hear how Joe says when Teresa had the abortion, he felt like a part of him died as well because that baby was a part of him too. Well, that baby may have been a part of you, but because that baby was growing in Teresa's body and Teresa's body had to provide housing for that baby until it's born, I believe Teresa had more say. Teresa had more say over that baby and what was done with that pregnancy. All Joe did was deposited some sperm. Teresa had to go through all the problem, her body changing, this baby growing inside of her, giving birth and everything. She had to deal with so much more than he has to deal with. So even though that baby was in fact a part of you, hey, that's her body. If you didn't want, then why don't you go get pregnant and carry the baby yourself so you can determine what you want to do? It's just a draw of the game. That's just the draw. So yeah, you gotta live with it. It's the woman's body, and she gets to decide what she does with her body. No excuses. Yeah? And I tell women, do not apologize for being a woman. Being a woman is a beautiful thing. So much so that all of the man them want one woman. But anywho, that's a different story for another time. But let us continue. Not that anyone knew how I felt. I was a cool dude in those days. Nothing fazed me. It was easier blaming her than facing my part of the fiasco. Looking away, he let out his breath. He rested his forearms on his raised knees and was quiet for a long time. Teresa and I didn't last a month after she had the abortion. We were both angry. When we broke up, she got involved with another guy in the gang. 4 months later, she was pregnant again, and she had another abortion. Agitated, he stood up and moved a little away from her. He stared out over the rippled waters. Last time I was home, I looked her up. I wanted to make amends for my part in what happened. She's living in Watts. She has 2 children by different fathers. She's drinking, using dope, and living on welfare. Her life's a mess. Not everyone who has an abortion ends up like that, Joe. No, I'm not saying that. He turned to look at her. But sometimes I wonder if there aren't a lot of people out there like me, playing it cool, acting like nothing phases them, pretending it don't matter, all the while dying inside. Dinah, Dinah thought of her mother and grandmother. How many others suffered in silence, too ashamed and too afraid to speak about their pain. The world wouldn't let them grieve for children they had aborted. How could they when the rhetoric said there was no child? How does one grieve what doesn't exist? No one wanted to admit the truth. Even, even those who never had part in a decision of life and death suffered. Like her father. She remembered a speaker at NLC saying 1.5 million babies were aborted every year. His focus had been on the children lost. Now, she wondered how many mothers cried in anguish over their decision. How many fathers felt as helpless and angry as Joe? What of the men and women who married them later and lived in the shadow of death? What of their children? What of the generations to come? The weight of such grief and guilt was overwhelming. And it occurred to her, maybe that was why everyone said it didn't exist. Not a child, not the guilt, not the consequences. One decision can permeate your life forever, Joe said grimly. Your family, your community, your nation. God can forgive anything. Joe's mouth tipped in a half smile. I know he's forgiven me, and I'm grateful. What happened is a big part of the reason I came to Christ. Letting go of it is something else. She scooped a handful of sand and let it sift through her fingers. Are you atoning, Joe? Is that why you are so set on helping me have this baby? Was his assistance aimed at purging himself of guilt? Joe came back and hunkered down beside her. He tipped her chin, waited until she looked him straight in the eyes. I don't want to see you hurt anymore, any more than you have been hurt already. Life hurts. You can't get away from it. Yeah, yeah. He brushed his knuckles lightly against her cheek. It does. Some got hurt more than others. She rose and walked down to the water, standing close enough that the waves lapped her feet and dampened the hem of her skirt. Joe removed his boots and socks and joined her, standing at her side, not saying a word. Let me see what the people in the chat here to say. How far gone is Dinah in her pregnancy? Well, it is now around May, and she was raped in January. So she is far along. Liz says, but out of respect, it should be discussed. And then again, I don't think he loved her. Well, you got a point there, sis. You have a great point there. Out of respect, it should be discussed. But then again, I fear about it. I mean, maybe she might not even want even the father to know that she's pregnant or what she's going to do, because the more people you tell is the more conflict there is going to be. Everybody's opinion is suddenly going to matter, and then you are left with the trouble and the conflict as to what to do. It's your body, but everybody else has a say as to what you do with your body. You are going to be the one who have to deal with the child growing inside of you, giving birth to that child and everything else. But before all of that, everybody has an opinion. Yeah. Abortion is by choice. But why so much pregnancies? What about eggs? That's exactly what I say. That's exactly what I say. Use contraceptives. Don't use abortion as a contraceptive. Abortion is not contraceptive. And people don't understand that when they constantly do these things, you know you can use contraceptives to prevent pregnancy, but you choose not to. In Dinah's case, she did not choose not to. It was unfortunate what happened to her. But there are others who are using abortion as birth control. So they go out, they act recklessly, they get pregnant, and then they believe, oh, well, I can go do an abortion and I'll be just fine. No, that's not what it should be used for. I was a cool dude in those days. Nothing fazed me. It was easier blaming her than facing my part of the fiasco. Looking away, he let out his breath. He rested his forearms on his raised knees and was quiet for a long time. Teresa and I didn't last a month after she had the abortion. We were both angry. When we broke up, she got involved with another guy in the gang. 4 months later, she was pregnant again. She had another abortion. Agitated, he stood up and moved a little away from her. He stared out over the rippling waters. Last time I was home, I looked her up. I wanted to make amends for my part in what happened. She's living in Watts. She has 2 children by different fathers. She's drinking, using dope, and living on welfare. Her life's a mess. Not everyone who has an abortion ends up like that, Joe. No, not at all. He turned to look at her. But sometimes I wonder if there aren't a lot of people out there like me, playing it cool, acting like nothing phases them, pretending it doesn't matter, all the while dying inside. Dinah thought of her mother and grandmother. How many others suffered in silence, too ashamed and too afraid to speak about their pain? The world wouldn't let them grieve for children they had aborted. How could they when the rhetoric said there was no child? How does one grieve what doesn't exist? No one wanted to admit the truth. Even those who never had part in a decision of life and death suffered, like her father. She remembered a speaker at NLC saying 1.5 million babies were aborted every year. His focus had been on the children lost. Now, she wondered how many mothers cried in anguish over their decision. How many fathers felt as helpless and angry as Joe? What of the men and women who married them later and lived in the shadow of death? What of their children? What of the generations to come? The weight of such grief and guilt was overwhelming, and it occurred to her maybe that was why everyone said it didn't exist. Not a child, not the guilt, not the consequences. One decision can permeate your entire life, Joe said grimly. Your family, your community, your nation. God can forgive anything. Joe's mouth tipped in a half smile. I know he has forgiven me, and I'm grateful. What happened is a big part of the reason I came to Christ. Letting go of it is something else. She scooped a handful of sand and let it sift through her fingers. Are you atoning, Joe? Is that why you are so set on helping me have this baby? Was his assistance aimed at purging himself of guilt? Joe came back and hunkered down beside her. He tipped her chin, waiting until she looked him straight in the eyes. I don't want to see you hurt anymore, any more than you have been hurt already. Life hurts. You can't get away from it. Yeah. He brushed his knuckles lightly against her cheek. It does. Some get hurt more than others. She rose and walked down to the water, standing close enough that the waves lapped her feet and dampened the hem of her skirt. Joe removed his boots and socks and joined her, standing at her side, not saying a word. Dinah looked up at the blue skies. You know the strange part? I don't hate the man who raped me. I see him as a child of wrath who didn't know any better. Oh, he hurt me. He hurt me more than I'll ever know. But it was mostly physical. Her eyes filled with tears. It's the others, Joe. It's the ones who should have known better and still bought into the lies. Those are the ones who have hurt me most. Ethan, Janet, Dean Abernathy, Pastor Whitehall, my own mother and father. They never meant to betray me, but they did. She looked up at him, tears slipping down her cheeks. I had to get out, Joe. I had to get away. Can you understand that? Her eyes glistened. It's been so long since I felt close to the Lord. I couldn't hear him anymore. I couldn't feel him close to me. I even began to doubt his existence. I felt forgotten. And now? She took a shuddering breath and released it, her body relaxing. She looked oddly at peace. I think I did what he wanted me to do. Come out from them and be separate, he said, not just in a physical sense, by running away, but by seeing things through his eyes, understanding the truth. I have to be separate in my way of thinking and not let my emotions rule. Oh, and they have ruled, Joe. They have. They have ruled for months. I've let myself be kept in turmoil, stumbling every which way I turn. And no wonder. Don't make excuses for me. The world's too good at that. There was a new steadiness in her he had never seen before. It suited her. I knew the truth, Joe. I've always known. It's as though God put it in me from the moment I was conceived. I was just too afraid to live it out. Taking his hand, she squeezed it lightly and smiled up at him. I'm not afraid anymore, Joe. I'm going to have this child. Beyond that, I'll wait and see what the Lord wills. Withdrawing her hand, she turned away, lifting her face to the sunshine. Closing her eyes, she felt the warmth, inhaling the scent of sea and pine, warm sand and fresh air. She felt more alive than she had ever felt before. Joe watched her, thanking God for the chance, thanking God for the change in her. She had not allowed anyone to take anything away from her. Dinah laughed. Oh, Joe, it's amazing, she said, feeling movement inside her womb. She ran her hands down slowly over her body. She lowered her head, waiting, and felt it again. She smiled. It's a miracle when you think about it, she said softly. The night I was raped, the doctor told me the chances of my getting pregnant were almost nil. And yet, it happened. There must be some purpose, some reason only God knows, for this child to be born. Joe drank in the beauty of her, watching the wonder in her expression, the way her hands moved like a caress over the unborn child. She looked up at him. All things work together for good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. Isn't that true, Joe? That's what the scripture says. She smiled, eyes shining with gentle humor at his solemnity. A noble utterance. Even he wasn't fully convinced. He he was still caught up in the unfairness of what had happened to her. God never promised life would be fair. He offered a simple choice: justice or grace. I choose your grace, Lord. Thanks be to God. You are my Lord, the lover of my soul. I know it won't be easy. I'm weak. Day in and day out. It's going to be a battle to keep the faith and wait to see what the Lord has planned. But what other alternative is there but death? I choose life. I choose to believe God's word. I choose to believe in his presence and his promises. I choose to have this child. I choose to believe that God is the father of the fatherless. She put her hands over the unborn child, her gesture protective and tender. However this child was conceived, God will be the father. My baby won't enter the world unloved or unwanted. If I can't feel a full measure of love and joy, I know the Lord will. Joe stroked the tendrils of blonde hair back from her face. So be it. Surrendering to impulse, Dinah stepped close and slipped her arms around his waist, hugging him hard. I am so blessed to have you as a friend, she said in a choked voice. Afraid she'd embarrass him, she withdrew quickly and walked away. Joe closed his eyes, his pulse hammering. Oh God, you know my heart. Forgive me. I ask too much. Dinah picked up her coat and shook the sand from it. What do you say I treat you for lunch? She said, slipping her arms into the sleeves. She picked up his jacket. I know a place at Noya Arbor where they serve wonderful clam chowder. He walked up the beach towards her. You were on. Taking his jacket, he flipped it over one shoulder and fell into step beside her. Oh, that is so sweet of Joe. Joe is going to end up being the daddy for this baby, believe me. Joe is going to be the daddy for this baby. I promise you that, guys. Trust me. And to be fair and honest, I am not even going to read ahead Sometimes when I'm reading the novels and I get so excited, I oftentimes read a little bit ahead. But this time, I am not even going to read one word ahead. I am going to read just at the same time that I'm reading for you all. That is the time that I am going to be reading the book. I'm not reading ahead, I promise. I promise. I'm not going to read ahead. And here, poor Dinah. Poor Dinah. Dinah is going through hell. But it seems like she's about to shake it off. It seems as though she's about to shake it all off. And yeah, it seems as though she's about to shake it all off. She is determined to have the baby, and it seems like Joe is going to be by her side. But now I wonder about Doug. Is Doug and Anna, her parents, going to give her a hard time? Are they going to be able to love that baby? Are they going to be able to love that baby considering that they are so adamant for her to have the abortion? We don't know. And we won't know until we come back and read the story. When we come back tomorrow, guys, we will continue with the reading of the story of the atonement child. Once again, I want to say thanks to. Let me see what Andrea says here. Andrea says, persons who are willing to have so much abortions are ignorant of self and purpose, ignorance of their character. Exactly. People, yes, I can understand if you have to have, if you're in a predicament and you have to have an abortion. I perfectly understand. But if you are going to consistently go out there, get pregnant because you see abortion as an option, I say that you are reckless, you are careless, and if those abortions render you sterile, you deserved it. You asked for it, you worked for it, and you got it. So, those of you who are listening, please be reproductively responsible. You know, be responsible. Uh, the last person who was irresponsible like that is close to dead. So please, the the rest of you need to be more responsible. There are so many contraceptives out there. So many. There are many, many options, many, many choices for a young woman to take in order to not get pregnant. So I implore you out there to use contraceptive. You ever hear them say an ounce of prevention is better than 10 pounds of cure? Yes. So it's better for you to prevent yourself from getting pregnant than lay yourself careless, get pregnant, and think that abortion is the answer. All right, guys. That's where we are going to end the live for tonight. Yeah. That's where we are going to end the live for tonight. Once again, I want to say thanks to everybody who came into the live, whether you're on the talk or the tube. I sincerely, sincerely appreciate you. Those of you on the tube, if you did not hit the like button coming in, please don't forget to hit the like button going out. And those of you on the talk, thank you so much for over 6K likes. And I think I got also some roses. I sincerely, sincerely appreciate it, guys. Thank you all so, so, so much. You're welcome, Liz. It was an absolute pleasure, my love. It's an absolute pleasure coming here and reading for you all. In the morning, we will continue the reading also of Jeremiah, the prophet. Don't miss it, guys. Don't miss the reading tomorrow morning. And I'm also going to stream on the Talk on the Tube. On the Talk and the Tube at the same time. All right, so if you can't join me on one, join me on the other, where I will be continuing with the reading of the Bible and the novel. And that's going to be it from me for tonight, my friends. Until next time, this is Trev from Trev Essence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great night, everybody. Oh wow. People may get 24 diamonds. 24 diamonds. What am I supposed to do with them then? I don't even know when people send me gift for the talk. I don't have a clue what to do with them. No clue at all. Somebody have to go enlighten me. But anyway, I want to say thanks to you all guys for coming. I sincerely appreciate y'all. I'm going to get me a nap right now. All right, guys. I will see you all later. Sister Liz, Andrea, Desireen, Joe, AG, and everybody else, Cad, and the whole 9 yards. Have yourselves a great night, everybody. Oh, yeah. My bedtime, you know. Yeah, but normally it wouldn't be my bedtime now, but I'm a bedtime now considering I'm at work today, so I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired, so I'm going to go on my bed.